Suppose the fall of the House of Usher follows the narrator as he travels to his childhood friend's home to be with him in his time of need. Upon arriving, however, he finds the Usher house to be dilapidated and decaying. He also gains a foreboding sense of unease in his gut, telling him that something horrible is going to happen. However, the love of his friend Roderick and determination to be with him in these moments overcomes any instinctual fears he has, pushing them down and entering the house anyway. Upon arrival, the narrator also remarks on how the Usher family are old and high class, but have never prospered. Only one member of each generation has survived to create the next generation of Ushers, with this trend continuing. All other outside branches have summarily been cut down in some way, leaving only a direct line of descent. The narrator also remarks on how the rest of the townspeople would often confuse the family members for the house itself due to the estate being incredibly intertwined with the family. When the narrator meets his friend again, he gets physically and emotionally distraught, fearful, and paranoid due to his twin sister Madeline's illness that will soon result in her death. Upon Madeline's death, the narrator helps Roderick bury her beneath the house to prevent the doctors from using her body to examine her rare condition. A strange fog appears outside, much to Roderick's horror, but the narrator rationalizes this occurrence anyway. The narrator tries various ways of cheering up Roderick to no avail as he reads. He begins hearing strange noises that he dismisses as his own imagination. Suddenly, Roderick confesses he's been hearing the same sounds and admits that may have buried Madeline alive. His fears are confirmed when Madeline appears bloody and attacks Roderick, who dies from fear only to also die from the exhaustion of digging herself out. The narrator also escapes the home as it collapses around him, eventually falling and burying the last of the Usher family with it, marking an end to the line. Himes' article, The Fall of the House of Usher Overview, sums up the ending here by stating, ultimately this universe will cease to expand and bend back upon itself in a cycle of contraction, resulting in final reunification with the source that must annihilate things as they now exist. He remarks on how the house and its inhabitants eventually return to the earth they came from, further zeroing in on the ecological aspects of the work with ecocriticism. If one takes a more broadened analysis of the work with ecocriticism instead of focusing on the characters, one can see the environmental force at play. Ecocriticism regards literature and the relationship it has with the environment. Instead of looking at a work from a human perspective, one looks at it from a more environmental one. Opperman's article, Eco-Critical Forms of Engagement with Nature and Text, further adds to the definition by stating, eco-criticism considers nature writing outdoor narratives highly important in creating perspicuous environmental perceptions. Upon using eco-criticism, the environmental perspective becomes more prominent in the work when the narrator sees the house, noting its horrid and decrepit state, along with the eye-like windows. It's only natural to take the environment into account, considering just how intertwined the house is with the family. From this perspective, one can see nature once again beginning to reclaim the area in preparation for the Usher's untimely end. The man-made structure falling with it. Upon first gazing at the house, the narrator in postwork describes it by stating, I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house, and the simple landscape features of the domain, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye-like windows, upon a few rank sedges, and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul. Comparing the windows to eyes, it provides the sense that the environment itself is alive and watching, waiting for nature to take its course, as well as representing the inevitable downfall of the Usher line with the decaying trees, soon to be engulfed by the surrounding marsh. It also really represents the perspective that one takes when they look through an environmental lens. It becomes apparent that the Usher's era are also incredibly intertwined with the estate, given how their fate and the house collapsing at their deaths represents the unnatural creations of man, eventually falling and everything returning to nature as anything else would. In the end, they are just like animals and decaying trees, eventually dying out. The continued comparison of the Usher family to a tree with no branches via their own family tree, and the image of the decaying trees outside also speaks volumes for the house intertwined with the environment, with how intertwined it is to the fate of the Ushers. The atmosphere itself also seems to be warning of something soon to come due to the muggy and gloomy and marshy land. The sense of dread increases as a strange fog encompasses the house after burying Madeline, which symbolizes natured bearing down on the house in mourning and visually representing the feelings of confusion, mysteriousness, insecurity, and loss, clearly referring to the feelings the characters themselves refuse to show and repress. Superman's article, Mirrors of House of Mirrors, Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher, showcases how Poe utilizes the environment to represent one's mind by stating, we find the narrator wandering a strange landscape that ultimately is a mirror to his inner torment, if not its mind itself. The ensuing storm that occurs during the struggle with a still alive Madeline not only showcases the rage and fear felt along with how nature has decided it was time to destroy the Usher line, making the house collapse in on them, but it also showcases the feelings that Madeline feels after being buried alive by her own brother. And the fog and dreary atmosphere at the beginning also showcases how Madeline feels beforehand. After escaping, the narrator sees a blood-red moon shine over the house, where a fissure in the roof used to be, now unobstructed, symbolizing the chaos that unfolded, along with the change that marked the end of the Ushers and nature reclaiming the area. Through utilizing ecocriticism to analyze the work via an ecological perspective, many aspects in the work make themselves known, including the scale of the Usher's connection to the house itself, along with the symbolism and themes of the various happenings and weather changes throughout the story, representing the conflict and the inner turmoil of the characters, including the dreary atmosphere, the storm, the fog, and the blood moon at the end shining down on where the house used to be.